So thanks, Nikki. I'm Nayan, Exec Director of AI here at ustwo, quietly leading all things AI. So with my ideas, strong opinions, and bias for action. Tonight, I'm just here as a facilitator for the conversation to continue the discussion around Emotive AI. We have a great group of folks joining us here from some of the world's biggest brands, goes without saying. So this is the third in the series of events since I joined ustwo. The first panel in New York, we talked about going beyond the hype, starting to understand how we can use AI to build more resonant, rewarding experiences alongside companies like Meta, Intuit, among others. And so in June, we explored how to develop AI responsibly and ensure that we're bringing the entire organization along the journey. That panel consisted of BT, L'Oreal, Careful Trouble. All these talks are available online, so please like and subscribe. But since then, we've been really busy, largely spending our time heads down on client work, a number of AI products in market. And so everything from an AI app for a brain-computer interface, so imagine controlling devices with your mind, let that sink in, to designing an AI-first knowledge base for a company like Cancer Platform, a global cancer charity helping patients navigate their treatment options and like post-diagnosis. We've also developed an app to show off some of our AI capabilities. This is to solve the adherence problem, starting with gut health. It's called Sproutable. So find us later and we can demo kind of what that looks like. Today, we're here to learn more about each of our panelists and get their take on Emotive AI. I will say personally that I'm deeply familiar and have used all the company's products at different points in my life, with the exception of Novo Nordisk. Thankfully, this is one of the benefits of being a former healthcare founder. I have access to clinicians to keep chronic conditions away. But I guess as a small tangent, I think the pace of drug discovery and AI, I'm speculating that we'll see some prescriptions that in our future that might be focused more on preventive care, but I'll have to do a sidebar with Alishwar on that one. So just as a quick run of show, we'll cover questions first about our users and what it means to use Emotive AI to improve the customer experience. From there, we'll chat about how AI can be an extension of the brand and the importance to build trust. And then finally, we'll go through the tools that allow us to work creatively and what it takes to develop Emotive AI. So anyway, enough for me. I'll let everyone introduce themselves, but would love to hear quickly what Emotive AI means to each of you as well.
Hi, everybody. My name is Anna Rafferty. I work for the Lego Group. I look after all of our consumer-facing digital experiences, the way we engage with our consumers. So children of all ages is how I like to describe it, because it is not just kids, but it is certainly also kids. I think it means careful trouble. You referenced Careful Trouble as an organization earlier. I think they're excellent. And I love what they stand for. So thoughtful, clever disruption.
Cool. Hey, Mark Nilsson. I'm a UX director at Google, working on the Android platform. Emotive AI is not necessarily a term that we use that much internally, but I think we're definitely working on products that are AI-driven, that do spark emotions, and we kind of have to control the models and control the input into those models. So the output is something that we want it to be, and something that we're excited about, and something that's like high quality for users. So I think that's the way we think about it.
Hi everyone, I'm Hirla Ossing. I'm heading up the human interface design team at Bang & Olufsen. And what we do is kind of figure out how can we use different technologies as ingredients to engage with humans. And a lot of our products is about how to set an atmosphere and how to be in a good mood, right? We're looking at that, and for that, AI is another super interesting tool. and it can kind of like, how do we get closer to human incept and what you want to achieve?
Hello, so my name is Martin Tegner. I work for Impact Group, IKEA, across the bridge. I'm a data scientist, so I work across quite a lot of our data-driven products, so to speak. Many things you see online where there is some kind of the machine learning data-driven fix. Emotive AI, I think I have a similar perspective as you, Morten. This is about some kind of conversational AI, and it's about how do this conversational AI speak and what kind of language does it use, how much emotions are within that. You probably expand that to other types of AI as well.
My name is Ali Adfer. I'm a principal user experience researcher at Novo Nordisk, specifically in a team called Future User Experiences, where we explore specific opportunities for improving treatment solutions over a longer time period. My research focuses on any interaction that a person has with a treatment solution touchpoint, from the medications, the instructions, the packaging, the device, the people that they interact with. When it comes to Emotive AI, basically I look at how people feel and behave around their treatments. And so when we integrate any technology, in this case if it was AI, and when I mean we, I mean the healthcare industry, how do people feel and behave around it? And when those technologies also present emotions and interact with us emotionally, that adds a completely new dynamic. And an interesting dynamic, but one that we have to be very careful with, we being, again, anyone who's a part of delivering care.
Thank you. So starting with customer experience, I'll share that at ustwo we work with the Inflection team and Mustafa Solman on Pi to bring to life an empathetic and conversational AI. That was the first of its kind. We reflected on how to best engage users and introduce them to AI in order to have meaningful conversations. Thinking about the prompt as conversation starters, tonality, the voice calling experience, something that we launched ahead of actually OpenAI. And so just getting to the question, should machines just be machines? Are they meant to just act transactionally and sound robotic? What opportunities and risks do you see for AI? Once they can understand and evoke human emotion. So Anna, maybe we'll start with you.
Thank you. So I guess I have a two-pronged perspective on this. On the one hand, the LEGO Group has invested a great deal, very successfully, in creating Sophia. Sophia is one of our customer service advisors. She handles over 5% of our global customer service queries now, very efficiently. She is delightful. We wrote a job ad for her. She, is really thinking about picking up an improv class. That she likes yoga. She is an AI, and she is trained in what's called the LEGO Freaky tone of voice. So that's FRKE. So that's friendly, reliable, knowledgeable, and engaging. We have very mature tone of voice guidelines, which were applied to things like the LEGO movie or our content. The way that we do any of our copywriting, will be in this tone of voice. And of course, we dial the different parts of Freaky up and down. And Sophia has been trained in that in multiple languages. So she can speak the LEGO speech, we think, very authentically. She therefore, is careful to declare every time that she is called on to say up front that she is a bot, that she talks about the fact that she is. We have a lot of sort of guardrails and labels around how she presents visually and in her language to be very clear to any user that she's not a real person, and there are therefore limits to what she might be able to do. What she does, we want her to do in a charming, engaging, brand appropriate way that's actually a delight to spend time with and should be quite funny. But she's not real. Because, and I say this comes to the second part of my perspective, what I'm really more concerned about is the questions around emotive, as you call it, or any kind of generative AI really, and their impact on children and any vulnerable users, but particularly children who are more susceptible, for instance, to bias or harassment, and who don't have the same cognitive capabilities as adults might do to understand what is real and what is not. And so with that in mind, we're very, very thoughtful about what, one, we can see opportunities as so fear is a joy. When it comes to play and kids and the impact of AI, generative AI, on childhood development and their creativity and, you know, all of those things, we think there's a lot of unanswered questions. And so we're partnering actually with the Alan Turing Institute to fund some research into exactly that, to understand and ask the questions, and also to, this is why I'm here really, to implore all of you, when you're thinking about AI in your organization, you know, developing products or services that might use it, they're probably not designed for children, but children will be there because they always are. So I would really like everybody to think about, well, what happens if it's an 11-year-old accessing this, and what therefore should you think about it? And I think it becomes more important the more the human the experience feels.
So I'd love to hear from the rest of the panel. I mean, does that mean that we're developing AI to be more compelling and personalized? Does it have to be different for every user group, every type of user that your company is serving?
I can add maybe for us, authenticity is really key, and we work across hardware and software, so that space. And it's actually a little bit similar to another design challenge we're facing maybe, which is vegan and leather. So if we stand for it, if it looks like wood, it is wood. If it looks like metal, it is metal. And I think that actually also applies to AI, right? It's just within the digital space. So how do we figure out what is this thing, this entity that is an artificial thing? It's probably not human. It's also not that techy, right? We hope that it's emotive or has personality and character, but it's probably its own thing that we're just discovering right now. What does that mean? Maybe it's an assistant, it's an agent that's somewhere in between, but what does that character feel like, and how are we going to recognize like that is what this is, right? And then of course imbued with our brand's tonality, tone, force on character like this.
And so thinking about the users, what contextual clues can we take from the users and allow a chatbot experience or a conversational AI to adapt? Would love to hear about examples maybe internally or externally, things that you've seen kind of work well.
Yes, and I think with generative AI or LLMs, I think it's really important. I think that, I mean, it's a new piece of technology. It's like statistically driven. We have other statistically driven models like recommendation engines and so forth. And I think if something can sense your emotion and can recommend things based on that, I think we could create like really amazing things. Like we could create things that make you feel happier if you're sad, or that make you feel a little bit more calm if you're wound up and so forth. But there's also a risk that we take an emotion literally, and we almost like create a filter bubble around that. And if you're feeling sad, it will make you feel sadder and sadder and sadder. So I think there's like a really important like guardrails around that, and like user safety first and foremost. I think that's super important that we think about that. I think it's also about how we label these things. Like we've learned from recommendation engines that it's really important to users to understand why they're getting something recommended. I think it's really important here as well to understand that, like, okay, we think that you're feeling joyful, so that's why we're recommending this one comes, or you're feeling too joyful, so that's why we're recommending this thing. So I think that's, so I think like labeling things, making sure that users understand where things are coming from, and again, making sure that they're super safe, and also understanding and communicating that this is an AI-driven recommendation, I think that continues to be important here as well.
Yeah, I agree with much with what you say, but I think this is quite all about the interface and even to the user. I can probably have a functionality where you chat with us, but I don't give you a conversation in return. I just pick you a list of products, and all of a sudden there is not really any emotions, or that there's not these kind of aspects to this. I think we strive for whatever the database is. Of course, I think we strive for, in some sense, making our algorithms, AI, whatever, personalized. It should sort of understand, or it should give you something useful. But we can do this, and either I can watch your whatever you click on, and what products did you look on with, and for IKEA, so what kind of room or furniture was it, your kitchen, whatever, and I can try to figure out how to give you something good in return. I don't need to know anything sort of personal about you, and so yes, we do all this, but I don't think we need to step into your sort of private sphere. I don't need to know demographics or whatever. I don't need to profile you in that sense.
I mean, models are rapidly improving. We seem far from AGI. How do we account for the shortcomings? How do we handle that, right? AI often makes mistakes. They hallucinate. I can speak to an example of, so as we were filming Sprataful, the gut health companion, essentially you're using the camera on the phone. It's a multimodal AI, take pictures of food to essentially understand what are the plant-based ingredients, calculate plant points. As we started to use it, before we felt comfortable, putting that out in front of users, we really had to, pressure test that experience. And so, what are some ways in which, the conversational AI that your companies are building, how do you handle some of those exceptions?
I mean, I could start with so talking about Sophia again, not about kids, but I suppose it probably starts with us around consultation with our ongoing co-creation and consultation with our consumers. So essentially, we ask them, did this make sense? Is this actually what you were looking for afterwards? Was Sophia right? And that is systematic at every single contact that you ever make with a Lego group. You may not choose to answer us, but we will always ask you afterwards, and maybe ask you after every build, if you've ever noticed in your building instructions, there's an invitation for you to tell us about it, and if you enjoyed it and what was wrong with it, and did the instructions make sense. So it's very congruent with the way we have always worked. And of course, it is in that feedback loop, which of course in a customer services environment, it's pretty easy to design into the process. Once someone has had their problem solved, to ask them about it, and then we feed that information through, it's not rocket science, through good tagging, and then good analysis, and then that insight goes back into ensuring that as we continue to develop, that we are taking on board whether it makes sense or not. And as I said, the real challenge, of course, is doing that, or certainly where I think is a challenge, in so many different languages, and not just languages, but cultural contexts as well, where, in different markets, well, just specifically the Lego Group, for instance, we're a global company, obviously in Denmark, it's our home, and everyone's very familiar with the concept of building toys out of bricks in this market. But in emerging markets, in China, they don't know that at all. So their questions are quite different, and their understanding of our language and what we mean is quite different. So we have to be able to train in that appropriate way. So my short answer is, we co-create with our users all the time.
I can give an answer as well. I think it's quite important to basically fail gracefully. There was the old Twitter whale, for example, when Twitter was down. So that sort of stuff was more like a fun thing and a bit of a gimmick. And I think that people are going to rely on these tools to get things done and to get on with their lives and so forth. We can't just oh yeah, thank you for asking you that question. I have no idea. Or I'm just going to make up an answer. So I think how do we make sure that there's an endpoint, that there's a solution to the user, like if the agent itself can't do it, it can at least be like, I don't know how to do that, but here's a way to do it, or here's a way to achieve it. So you can see that with Google's agent Gemini, where it asks it to do something that it's not capable of, and it's aware that it's not capable of it, and it would give you a step-by-step of how to achieve it. So I think that, rather than telling you to gimmick that is incapable, like turn it into something that gets the user to where they need to go.
Maybe we should choose a little bit and talk about, brand and trust. I mean, what opportunities, if any, do you see for AI to deepen or broaden the brand experience? How do you build an AI that's differentiated from another organization's AI? For us, at least with Cancer Platform, we opted to use generative AI only for summarization as opposed to generating answers to patients' questions, right? And so, how do we build out essentially a better ground truth? And, we've definitely seen other healthcare companies, trusting a model almost implicitly, relying on fine-tuning, extensive guardrails, when they're creating content. But, I think our approach of being a bit more conservative allows us to build faster and again, get to that better base of ground truth. So I guess I'd be curious to hear from, Carolyn, on the opportunities, again, to deepen or broaden the brand experience with AI.
Yeah, so we're positioned definitely in a higher end luxury segment, and in there service is like key. So of course we're selling things, but it's all of the service around them, and maybe it's just loudspeakers or headphones or TVs, but there are a ton of complex sound settings, tunings, adjustments that you can do. And internal to us, we have super skilled acousticians, tone meisters and DSP who can really fine tune it. So how can we remove some of these steps that the user are facing out there, right? Media consumption as well is like exponentially, it's way more complex than it used to be. We're far away from like a CD or a fistful thing. You can navigate so many different content sources coupled with the technology here. So how can we, just remove a ton of this friction to get you faster to what you want to do and the kind of like the stage you want to achieve, and then maybe coupled with, giving you still either give you a bit of a learning experience, telling you a little bit about, maybe if you ask, we have an AI that helps you adjust the equalizer settings. You can make it perfect for a rainy day in Copenhagen, and then we can tell you why is it that it's better than what you had before, because it's trained on our own kind of in-house knowledge, research about perceptual acoustics. And so I think that there are some other ways, and that's also kind of a brand as storytelling. Hey, we actually do all of these things. You don't have to care about them if you don't care, but you can also have a bit of an educational moment here, and really maybe more appreciating the qualities.
This is based on a presumption, which is with all the objects in our life, we have a relationship with them, and with people, we have relationships. We may not always know or recognize or even acknowledge just how deep that relationship is. And in many cases, for example, for treatment solutions, I almost hope that it can be ignored so that it just sort of becomes a secondary thing. That being said, relationships with objects and relationships with people are very different, as they should be. There's an entire PhD dissertation probably in that alone that needs to be written. But when we start to add emotions and create identities that people interact with, it starts to get fuzzy, and this idea of trust that's been talked about in authenticity and interactions suddenly becomes a little bit different. And to me, it reminds me a lot of how when social media became an environment where multiple people could be talking about a brand, not just you, it creates a different conversation and a different relationship. So when it comes to building trust in a brand, or for that matter, anything, if it's a relationship, I lean back towards the same things that build trust in any relationship. Like what does reliability mean for this relationship between these people or this group and this user? And for each of us, I imagine there's certain things that are unique to our group and intimate to the products and services that we offer. I think the sooner we hone in on that, and we're also careful of perhaps some of the risks we want to avoid, we have a better chance of building whatever brand increase. But I'd say that's almost a secondary side effect of just being really mindful of how someone relates to to something and not trying to impose something that will feel artificial. Or if you are going to do that, being really clear about its artifice so that it doesn't feel artificial. I would argue that there's a lot of tools in our life that are non-organic and perhaps familiar to us as humans that we've integrated into our life because we know the place it fits in. This is this emerging technology that when implemented requires us to reevaluate that. And that's a learning experience for all of us, I think, just as humans, which is exciting and something to be reacted to with a lot of care.
That's totally right. Of course, there's tools that we use all the time, and we know what they are. I'm interested in lots of things in your question, because it's a big question, right? You know, there's something about trust. There's something about how you make it unique NI to your company. And then my question is a bit like, why do you need to do that? Generally, that's an interesting, like, maybe for confidentiality. We don't put confidential information into things like ChatGPT at work. It's policy. You don't want to train anyone else on our confidential intel. So I get that. But, you know, we use, I guess something about trust, the trust that we have in the AI tool, and then the trust that consumers may have in our brand or not because of the use of the AI tool, and then probably quite different things. So I use AI as a tool in moderation for kids' content, actually, pre-moderation. Anything that ever gets published on any Lego experience by a child, we give them all sorts of tools to make user-generated content, but everything is pre-moderated before it goes live. But the first stage of moderation is AI moderation. And but it's a really functional, quick check. And then there is a second pair of human eyes that go on it, because I don't trust it. I don't trust a safety standard that the Lego group has for kids' UGC in a public space. So I have to have a human there. So the first layer is about functional. And we use AI for that because it just speeds up the process. So it's a tool you use internally. But like I said, when we use then AI presenting to the consumer, we make sure it's really clearly labeled that it's a tool that they can use. There should be, I'd offer your examples that the good old days of Twitter fail well. You know, there's liminal spaces where you can insert your brand in something that feels joyful. In our moderation, if a child is not if their UGC doesn't pass the moderation test, we're trying to turn that into an entertaining sort of little joyful moment of teaching for them, so they don't feel that they got something wrong, but they learn from it. So it's funny, you know, you use non-playable characters, Ennett from the Lego Movie or Lego Batman more like, so you'll probably come and explain to them why they need to play harder. And that, you know, that's where I think you can insert brand-specific joy, liminal moments. But it is an external, sorry.
No, not at all. I'm excited to see just how much, and interested to see just how much so many of us on the stage, and I imagine for all of us, are facing similar questions about being careful and considerate towards trust and relationship with this tool. It made me think of two specific things, because when it comes to using human eyes and using the scrutiny that you're describing, one of them was a study that was done in 2023 by another group that looked at just how much impact different generative AI models and deep learning models could have on how a doctor might prescribe. But one of the things that consistently came up at a huge statistically significant level was just how much the doctor needed to know, yes, great, but I need certainty that this has been trained by doctors with doctor material. Otherwise, no amount of magnificent input could really build the kind of trust that was necessary. AI has been in healthcare for many years. If you use autocorrect in an EHR, you're using a form of AI. But then the second thing was, when I think about AI systems that have been really deliberate about acknowledging where trust could fail, there was a group that was explaining how a specific response engine that they were creating to identify potential pathologies that could be occurring, a diagnosis engine, was very good about when it eventually got to the point where it's like, I'm not certain, it said, well, let me stop right now and break down my reasoning so you can scrutinize me, which is essentially the peer review process. It's something you would do with another doctor. It's replicating some of the same ways we build trust and reliability between humans. It's just making it a little bit more visible so it's not as much behind a black box. And I can't help but see this as being a part of how we are going to need to build trust with whatever technology that might be.
And the trust it depends on the stakes, right? In healthcare, it's very important.
Yeah.
But I think you gave an example in the last pre-meeting. We had pre-meeting before all of you. And we were talking about like person training. And probably the stakes are a bit lower there, right? It's, if it tells me to do 19 recs instead of 18 recs or whatever, that's kind of fine. So those things are dynamic as well.
And so this is more of a meta question on the conversational AI extending the brand. When you think about the technology behind the AI, OpenAI, Anthropic, the other models, how does that impact, the brand? I mean, so many companies are, transparent about, the types of training data that they have and what goes into, fine-tuning a model and who they've partnered with. But when that organization, let's say, goes off the rails or has a differing opinion from the organization, are these large language models the new fundamental building block, pun intended, similar to, what we saw when we went from on-prem to the cloud, right? And so because this is such an important and transformative technology that we're building so many new products and experiences on, what does that mean for your brand when you're making a choice between, again, looking at AI and Anthropic or
I can give my view in that. I mean, quite often we look on the problem, the data problem, that predictive problem, whatever it could be, and then a tool like from OpenAI is more like a tool, and we use it. You can prompt it, you can use it as any other model. And then comes more about that's that model towards another model. And it can be a powerful tool, but I think quite often we realize that the sort of inbuilt knowledge it has. If we have the data, if we have the domain knowledge, and if we really start targeting things and then measuring some kind of performance metric or whatever it can be, the solution with the develop, our data is often performing better, and this kind of out of the box take a big model, then it could help for the sort of problem. In many contexts for us, it is another tool. And besides the sort of standard hard work that you have to do to develop something really good.
So I can't speak to specifically how one might, at least in our organization, would choose one approach versus another. However, I think what is really relevant in the healthcare landscape that is so regulated, and necessarily so regulated, is ensuring that whenever a technology, or in this case an AI model, might be employed, it meets certain robustness expectations, it meets the level of data privacy that's necessary, it meets a number of things. All of these are essentially important. The part that I'm also especially important in terms of the experience that it's creating is how does someone relate to whatever that value is, or how does someone relate to the value that is supposed to be delivered by it? So to be very specific, being able to acknowledge clearly what are the limitations of any technology, any model, and by the way, I presume that there is no perfect technology, there's always going to be limitations, is a hugely important part of the scientific conversation, because that's actually every scientific paper you'll read will almost always mention these limitations, these challenges, and how one addresses those limitations is a form of maturity. So especially when conversations come up in this regulated space of like, what is the appropriate technology, I think a number of groups are considering in this regulated space, well, what's not only going to meet the expectations for demanded robustness in regulated spaces, but also how are we going to handle the fact that everything is going to need to rise to or overcome some of the challenges that it may present. And again, I speak for any technology that's employed, it has to be considered this. Until we have a perfect technology, I'm not sure that it's possible to assume that there will be one model or one device or one thing to potentially address it all.
And so at least what we've seen is that organizations are at different levels of maturity, and some are still in the experimentation phase, some have products that are in market. So as we think about experiments and POCs, are users expecting products to have AI in them? what do the early experiments at POC look like? Can you share some of the feedback, things that you've heard, and maybe given how mature Lego has been in terms of.
Well, I talked about Sophia. Sophia is very established. In 2 years, and I said, significant amount of our consumer service contacts are going through. We're limiting it because it's a tool. Just makes it, it's a tool for the users, tool for us. I don't know. It's a really interesting question. Are consumers expecting it? I don't know. And again, when I think about consumers, everybody counts, but I'm really thinking about kids. And our early research does indicate that 70%, I think, of children in the developed markets have experimented and tried a kind of ChatGPT type tool. And of course, integration into Snap is straight into their world. Not that they're supposed to be there, but they are. So they're getting familiar with this idea. They talk about the AI at games, right? That's the vernacular of kids. I've got an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old, and they are very fluent in talking about what the AI not and what the AI should do. What they mean is non-codable characters, essentially. So it's part of their world. But as I said, so even if they do have an expectation of it, I don't know if that's enough for us to act yet. And that is why, and I really am petitioning you all, because I do think it is very important. And obviously it's important for my company. It's essentially for my company to be able to solve things for children. But I really will argue that it is existentially important for all of your companies, because while they're only 25% potentially of our population, now they are 100% of our future, which I know is really trite, that it's 100% true. And so, their expectations and what will lead to them and how they think services and products should be delivered, they will have an idea of it right now, that we should also be taking a position of responsibility to work out what future we should be setting them up for. And that means that we should be thinking about everything that we create with is not for them, and what impact, unintended consequence it might have on how they develop their future. Which is not what you asked for, and it's my soapbox, but it really is true.
I have a point of view. So I think we're in a bit of an interesting time, right? And we've talked about AI, but can't open a newspaper without reading about AI or anything. But I think, so do users or do consumers actually expect it? Do they hunger for it and so forth? And I think that they do, because it's all around them, and it's the hype cycle in some way. But I think will they think about the features will be good now as AI in 2 years, or will that just be a feature? We had levels of rule-based AI for a really long time. No one talks about that as AI anymore. So I think I think it's yes, there is a certain consumer hunger for it, but I think that's also a much bigger hunger for okay, can you get my shit done easier and quicker for me? And call it AI if you want to. Fuck it, just get it on for me.
Yeah, I mean, at what point does AI just become engineering, right, or software?
Yeah, and I think we've seen that with the previous steps or innovation of what was called AI at that time. But actually, I do want to come back to one of your first questions about the roboticness of AI voices. And I think that there's something quite interesting in the previous generation of AI, so Alexa and Assistant and so forth. They weren't actually very good, but the voices were amazing. It was the best voices we had. Or they asked you to do anything, and it's I can't really do that. I think nowadays I feel at least we're getting closer to the fidelity of the voice and the capability of the agent. Something that is quite an important one, and I think it's very similar to what the Sophia case that you've been talking about for chatbots of earlier generations, customer service chatbots. You were asking about something, and it's I don't know, it's the FAQ, and I think we're getting beyond that. So I think having a human voice or human tone of voice makes more sense when it has human or superhuman capabilities.
And so, beyond the experiments, I know many of your teams have products that are now live with AI. I'm curious as to how is that resonating with users? Is there any data that you can potentially share or case study stories? Maybe Caroline, here.
I think this is a really old example because we had a product launched in 2017 using an AI algorithm, and that was too early. So that was very clear customer feedback. It was called the Beer Sound Moment. It was this digital mood reel that could help you pick out music, right? So it's a lovely idea. It absolutely still is. What kind of mood are you in? How can we create a playlist for that? At that time, the technology was not nearly good enough to give you kind of what we had. There was all kind of other challenges in that, and I think that has given us a boost. More compute today, it's amazing. But we're still, I think we're in a forgiving space being within entertainment content, right? If we get it wrong, it's not that bad. And we leave you somewhere with an interface where you can kind of tweak things yourself so you will get to the right place, right? Then if you didn't like a song, skip. And it must set button. But it is really important to always probably have that feedback, both for training the model, was it good or not, but also for some kind of avenue of saying, hey, this is not right, or maybe it is really great.
And Margaret, I know you had an example around, the IKEA 3D experience with working in this.
That's quite a new, relatively new, and I think this it's in Sweden quite recently. It's a tool where you scan the living room and so not AI, but we build a sort of kind of toy desk for it, a 3D model for you, which should look like your room, and then you're supposed to pick out some new furniture. You can put in some other furniture, and there we use kind of data-driven and AI methods to help you select some products and also help you place them. And that is everything from a chair should stand on the floor, nothing ceiling, and things like that. But I think it becomes quite interesting because if you just sort of put together the sort of selection of a piece of furniture and where you place it, and then you iterate that. So all of a sudden you can think about this as removing everything from the room, and then you let that kind of agent furnish a full room. And then from IKEA, I'll have to think about, so what do we really, how do we bring our kind of thoughts and knowledge and expertise, interior designing into this kind of AI system. And this is at least I find this really exciting, how we can do that and build on, hey, there's a, yeah.
I'm curious about how the AI tools have been used internally to help enable creativity. I mean, how has it changed how your teams are working? We've had large organizations, like UBS, come to us and ask, well, what does your design experience look like? What does your design process look like? How are you using AI to kind of transform, make teams more productive? So here's how that's had an impact internally, apart from the products that we'd all deploy.
There are a lot of AI-generated Lego models out there. I don't know if you've all been sent. There was dogs, there was dragons. It always pictured people sent them to me and say, oh my God, is this real? I think, no, it is not real. It is not a real model. And by the way, the physics wouldn't work. I can't build that. It's impossible. So with our designers are not using that. Our designers, there's takes a lot of time to become a Lego set designer. It's an incredible job. They are not using those tools. But very interesting to see what users think are interesting and what's trending. So I think there's something, there's a business that is in my area called Bricklink, which we acquired a few years ago, and that's much more kind of fan-generated designs, and with huge communities. And so, of course, I guess in a different way, we're very much looking at what bubbles up in terms of kind of trends and tastes. And that is our users using AI that we can see.
And so just also curious about, internally in terms of, co-pilots, enterprise, open AI accounts and so on, how is that making, your teams more productive in terms of, tracking emails, responding to clients, moving things forward?
Sure. I was just thinking about who I should thank, because I think there are a number of groups within our organization that are working to make sure that it's rolled out, but of course in that responsible, compliant way. And I say this not obvious because of, we should all be responsible, compliant, but because it's so important. Not that it isn't for anyone else, that we're doing it responsibly. And so there are interesting ways in which I'm excited about seeing how we're doing it internally. And I think there's lots of places that can be provided, where value can be provided. I think the thing I wanted to respond to is the next opportunity I'm looking forward to, which is, I would imagine many of us have encountered the idea of, well, we can't put certain assets in this, or we can't put certain data in this for privacy's sake, for individual protection of our assets. That's something that's, I think, familiar to all of us. I'm really looking forward to when that's no longer a hurdle. When we get to the point where we built a system or are able to adopt systems that are so capable and so considerate that we can do that a little bit more freely. Now, I know that is possible currently in certain ways, but I think it'll be very, very fascinating when we've normalized systems with such great security that deploying internal tools becomes a lot easier and a lot less concerning from a risk standpoint. I think that'll be a really exciting day for everyone in this room, regardless of their industry.
And that's a good segue in terms of, last question here, just what excites each of you in terms of, the prospects for generative AI and creating better experiences for customers? What's on the horizon that either your companies are building, if you want to share some of your roadmap, or just what you're generally excited about in terms of where the market is headed?
I'm super excited about coming back to this fact, how can we remove kind of friction and stuff, utilize all the compute, get all of the contextual cues we can find, like how many people, how to make the best sound and hear. We can put so much information in there so that we can remove the hassle and the cognitive load for our users, right? So that you get pretty quickly, and things said earlier too, to what was your intent, right? And is it about, well, I just want a cozy afternoon here, and then there you go. Maybe it comes, right? And it learns about you, it knows about you, it's delivering it in a way that fits our brand. I think that the opportunities out there are endless. We'll be cautious on the way, right? And figure out what is the right way.
I think there's going to be loads of opportunities in the future for creativity, and I think that's really exciting. And to be really clear, that's why we're doing that research, because we want to just understand what the impacts might be on things like play and development. But I'm sure there's great opportunities to expand or empower the child to imagine, to play differently, to get more. I think that is thrilling, the idea right there. So we have to do our groundwork first.
The opportunities I see are almost endless, right? Where loads of people have trouble reading, or at least reading at an advanced level. Like LLMs or GenAI can kind of help them. They can summarize, they can simplify the text. Like anyone would be able to read Shakespeare, for example, going forward. I think writing is something like if you're dyslexic and you have trouble writing, like the tools can go further down to correct, right? And it can make you sound, and it can give you a more advanced language than you actually have. If you're bad at drawing, but you still want to express yourself, like GenAI can help you with that. So I think that's endless opportunities, and I think that I go very deep into all of the, problems that humans can have and ultimately.
It's a very romantic one, but it's the exact reason that pressured me 17 years ago to get into this field, which was any technology or means that allows healers to heal better, or people to be unburdened by their condition, is a worthwhile consideration of time and research and development. It just happens to be that right now one of those is generative AI, and I think the exciting part about it is that it's providing types of relationships that beforehand we didn't think were possible, and certain types of trust that we didn't think were possible. We're at the beginning, obviously, but it'll be very interesting to see where it goes.
Well, I guess with that, I want to thank all the panelists for the spirited discussion, the audience for their time and bearing the weather. So I think please reach out to us after the event. We'll keep the dialogue going, and let's find ways to solve problems together. Thank you.